I've been in the House of Lords for 3.5 years now, and I think most people's perception is that it'd be much harder for me to make the transition than a lot of people from business, but actually from sport, and certainly when I started, when the Paralympics wasn't really known, I had to go out and create, your own coaching team, your own training partners, you're kind of responsible for everything that, I did as an athlete. And actually that's just sort of transferred really well. As a crossbencher, we don't have any support behind us, we don't have any staff. It's really funny when we get emails saying, could you please get a member of your staff to help, part of it with the Lords is you're there as an individual. So for me, it's also the resilience in terms of, sport was great, but nobody lived or died. Although I probably died in a few races, but that's another story. But, now the stuff we're doing, it affects lots and lots of people. So, when you lose a vote, or actually even sometimes when you win a vote and it's going to be overturned when it goes back to the Commons and you're going to lose anyway, it's that kind of resilience to keep going and not be afraid to keep trying. And what sometimes amazes me is that there's some colleagues in the Lords who've never taken anything to a vote or are sometimes frightened. You wouldn't expect it from the people there. But I think the one thing I've learned is never be afraid to say what you think and never be afraid to take something to a vote. So
some people live even in the House of Lords are living in a little bit of a comfort zone, because some people can in sports, aren't they, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was always hugely ambitious. Actually, in my sporting career, I never felt I'd done enough. That's the thing that kept me going on and on and on, because I always just wanted to do more.
It's the sense of urgency, the idea that you must structure your life in a way. I mean, I ate broiled chicken, steamed spinach, and a cup of brown pasta for every lunch for 6 years.
Because that's what you were told.
Because that's what helped me maintain, at that time, 4% body fat. It's hard to do, don't even try it. But it was just, it made perfect sense. Every time I did it, I was like, this is a step on the path to being in the NBA or staying in the NBA, and especially the staying part. When I suddenly started seeing these amazing, phenomenal 19-year-old athletes, and I was like, oh, there's another one I need to get injured. I think with the games, it was evidence of, it is absolutely no problem to have a vast, wide-reaching, mythical standard of objective and goal, which is what I think the games were. As long as the process that you take to get there is as far from mythical as you can get. So if you want these amazing results, and not just the legacy items, but even pulling the whole thing together, this vast vision, it's fine for it to be visionary and a bit ethereal, but the way you get there is pragmatic, systematic, and every nut and bolt must be in place. And to me, that's what I saw. Because a lot of people, again, when they want to do great, grand things, the way they go about it is also woolly and fluffy and, I want to be the greatest this, and then they say, how do you know that? Well, I'm going to do a bit of this and that. And the Olympics was the opposite of that.
Some of the things that lots of other people thought were really important, actually the athletes are saying, none of that matters. And having a discussion about beds. So actually, because there's a lot of really tall people at the Olympics, and also there's lots of really small people, like the gymnasts. And I probably spent about 1.5 years arguing about beds, because saying and blackout blinds, because saying if you can't sleep, that affects performances. So I think what the athletes did, we were always that sort of constant reminder that you're doing it for the athletes, and if the athletes are kind of mostly happy and compete well, everything else takes care of itself. But I had about 8.5 years of people stopping me in the street saying the game's going to be rubbish, and it's like, and we'll never build it, and the games makers will never turn up, and the weather will be rubbish. And I think it showed, we can build stuff, we can make things happen. I think that's been great for everybody. The reality is the Olympics, Paralympics were never going to change the world. They weren't going to suddenly get every single person participating in sport. And I think that's sort of one of the difficult things. I think there's an assumption that that the games were going to suddenly inspire people. And they have inspired lots and lots of people to do things different. I think it's inspired people to think about, going on a zip wire or being artistic or just doing things. But without serious investments, then actually that legacy is going to slip away.
It's a qualitative change too. So, I have my community centre in Manchester. I'm just going to correct Lisa, it's actually 3,000 people a week, not 2, but, it's cool. it works because of how the kids feel when they're there. It doesn't work because they all love basketball, because this is Britain and half the kids who arrive have no idea what they're doing. I kick this? No, you do not kick this.
Yeah.
And so we have kids from 7 through to our oldest participant at 78, and he plays gentle basketball. But how it feels is what makes the kids want to be involved. All of our staff of 9 are former kids, not out of expediency, not out of convenience, but because they get it. They understand how you attract kids to sport. So it isn't about, basketball is certainly not magic, no sport is. It doesn't matter what it is, it's how you coach. And one of the things I want to use the Olympics for, continue to, is change how we coach so that kids come to sport and they require a connection. There are some people who come to sport and the only adult who cares about them is that coach, potentially. The only connection that they make that is authentic is with their team or with a group of people that they're competing with, even if they're single athletes within a team format. That's what we've got to encourage. And we have to be very careful of generating excitement through the games, because there is something worse than not having an opportunity, and that is being presented with an opportunity that is remarkable, that is inspiring, and then realizing it has a shelf life, because the session that you might be involved with afterwards is 6 weeks. It's a taster session. Britain falls in love with taster sessions. The idea that you get to do something awesome for 6 weeks and then, see ya. Really? That's what we're going to do?
Can I just pick up on a word which you talk about a lot in your book, Man in the Middle, which was, a book which had huge impact and a bestseller. You talk about a level of authenticity. Will you just talk about how important that was for you and it is for people?
I think it's one of the most important things. We spend a lot of time not actually having relationships with real people. We have relationships with facades of people, and they are necessarily vacuous relationships. You just don't invest in having a relationship with the image of a person. And if people don't give you some access to the things that make you feel, make you aspire, make you hope, make you sad, whatever it is, if they don't have some access to that within you, then you're just relating to a title in business, for example. It's a mistake that a lot of teachers make. You're just relating to a physics teacher if you've got no access to who they are. And this is not about over-disclosure either, but it's about letting people in a little bit, letting people understand you. To me, it's fundamental. But I'm a psychologist, so my job is talking to people. And if I talk to people and they think I'm talking to a psychologist, then we just don't get anywhere. Because it's not America where talking to a psychologist is a badge of honor.
To be done after breakfast.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and then talking to a psychologist is a good thing. Whereas here, not so much. So the authenticity for me is that it's a massive deal. It's one of the first barriers you have to break down.
Did you, obviously when in your book on authenticity you talked about your sexuality. Do you feel that if you'd been authentic from the start, you would have been better basketball player?
I certainly, if I'd have come out when I was younger, I would certainly have been a better potential basketball player. The problem is I wouldn't have been a basketball player.
Yeah.
I would have been a fat psychologist in Manchester. I'm heading back in that direction actually. But
because of the terrain. As
yeah,
it were.
you just don't. I got to America and coaches overlooked me and said, "Oh, we don't want him in our summer league team," because of the way I taught. The reason I have facial hair is because when I was in college, my teammates sat me down. All of them, 15 guys, sat me down in a locker room and said, "We're going to have to do something about this because your voice isn't right."
Sorry.
So we need to make you look tougher. So they made me grow a goatee. Yeah, that's better, Mitch. Really? And now just don't talk when you play.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I knew if they had a problem with me being British, then being gay and British, one of the advantages of being gay and British is that Americans can't tell the difference.
Do you know, actually, in the House of Lords, it's probably the most equitable place I've ever been. We've got about a third of the membership is women. It's really interesting if you look at the statistics. Actually, women contribute much more in the chamber in terms of time and how much work they take on. So the women tend to work across a much wider area. But actually, I've met some of the most open men I have ever worked with, which, when I first went there, the average age in the Lords is 69. And, there are a few people who call me the young girl in the wheelchair. There's one peer who, bless him, he walks very, very slowly, and he always tries to rush around me to open the door for me. And, I can open the door better, but I don't think women's ever opened the door for him. Ever, ever, ever. But actually, in terms of encouraging people, they want to beat you when you've been the best you can. So actually, I had a government peer last year who's a lawyer, who reworded an amendment for me to make it better and then voted against me. Now that wouldn't happen in the outside world, and so actually that's very empowering and kind of has given me a whole new sort of enthusiasm for trying to change stuff outside. And I just now find it funny when you hear people say, oh, there's not enough good women in business, or there's not enough, you get a lot, there's not enough good women in sports. Actually, there's loads of good women, they just need to, learn different skills.
I remember one of the things I felt really good about was when I was with the Orlando Magic. We had a rookie come in who was a really high quality rookie, and I walk into the locker room and they're massive places. There's only 15 of us and there's massive amounts of space, and so I have my locker, and then there are 2 spaces next to me, for everybody. And then all of a sudden I come into the locker in the new season and I've got this rookie, his label is above, and I'm like, really? Because I thought, this is an insult to me. I am being squashed in my locker. I don't have space to stretch. And then I was called into the office by my coach, and he said, look, we're doing this because he needs your guidance. He's crazy. He's got some, he's a bit of a wild child. You are not. We need him. So suddenly I felt involved in the process of him getting better. And then as he got better, he was a different position for me. So technically he wasn't going to take my time. But as he got better, I felt a great sense of pride, and that's what you have to do. You have to know that, and you can't do that unless you can tie everybody together with a really coherent vision of what you're trying to achieve. A lot of people set goals. A lot of people have vision statements, and they're usually useless. When I wanted to play basketball, it's the most improbable thing ever. Coming from the most unlikely kid, I was the fat kid who hid in the corner of the library and read books. And yet somehow, when I thought about basketball, I could see it, I could smell it. I remember waking up one night and blinking my eyes because I'd been dreaming about sweat dripping into my eye while I was playing. This is the level of detail the more improbable the goal, the more detailed that future history, that future vision of what you're trying to achieve must be. There are 3 things that we know improve intrinsic motivation. These 3 things are relatedness, competence, and autonomy. So for young people, autonomy, the idea that they are active movers in this, that they aren't just pawns being pushed around either a court or a training room or wherever it is, the idea that they've got some say. And this is the same, I would point out, for education. It's also the same for workplaces. The moment you make them into an automaton, they will do exactly what they are rewarded for and nothing else. Nothing more than that. That is as true in business as it is in sport. Competence, the idea that you help them understand that whilst they may not have all the skills they need right now, they can gain them, and that you illustrate to them, illuminate to them a pathway for gaining the necessary skills to be good at something. And the last and I think more important part of all of this is relatedness, which is not warm and fuzzy stuff, but the idea that what they make in this environment is an authentic relationship. Somebody who cares about them in an authentic way. You bring those things together, all of a sudden you don't have to remunerate people to do stuff. We know this. We know this in business as well as in sport. You don't have to provide the very best of everything in terms of making sure my center is not the prettiest, because our money goes other places than on making it look fantastic. It's the best wooden floor in the country in terms of basketball, but outside of that, everything else is pretty basic. Our showers are at 5'8". I still don't really understand how that happened. It's a frustration for me, for sure. But we try and engender those other 3 things, which means kids just want to be there, because everything about the place makes them feel like they are in control of their own destiny, they have power, and that they have connections that are really important to the people around them. what I try to encourage people to do is really examine who they are as individuals. What are the skills that you bring to bear? Not everybody can be charismatic, and you can't teach it, whatever books you read. It is an intangible that is incredibly difficult to conceptualize, so very difficult to teach. But what are the qualities you have that you can bring to bear for this team? And one of those things is being authentic. When you present yourself as you are and say, look, I've got some deficiencies and I've got some skills, but together we can make this work, you're going to garner a lot more followership that way than coming in and just saying, because of my title, you should do what I say. I just try and get people to use their own personalities, their own skills, and to understand that little things count. One of the things I observe with leadership most often is there's this concept of flexing, the idea that you should change, not change, but bend your personality to better help the people around you work, bend your style to help the people around you work better. And we've got this thing in hierarchies where people think that when you're junior, you should bend all the time, and when you're senior, you shouldn't have to bend at all. You shouldn't have to flex, which is amazing to me. It's the opposite way around. When you're junior because you are less experienced and less skilled, ostensibly. So why would you make people who are already less skilled, already have less experience, flex away from what they're comfortable doing? You've just reduced their efficiency by 30%. Whereas if you're senior, the whole point of you being senior is that you have massive experience, a massive skill set. And so you flexing 1% at that level means that the people below you don't have to flex. Your effectiveness as a team goes up remarkably that way. So it's those types of things I try and bring in, make people realize that and leadership is in those small details. It's not in a title.